Hi, you are listening to the Conflict and Development in Africa podcast. This podcast is for policymakers, governments, researchers, students, businesses, and anyone that is interested in conflict and development issues in Africa. On this podcast, we hear from experts from across Africa and the world. Your host, Dr. Michael Nwankpa, will ask the questions you would want answers to. Michael Nwankpa has an extensive experience spanning over a decade studying, researching, writing, and consulting on conflict and development issues in Africa.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Conflict and Development in Africa podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Nwankpa. Today we're going to be discussing the End Bad Governance protest in Nigeria, the anti-Igbo sentiment, and the possible Russian support. I'm joined by a very special guest, Barrister Liborous Oshoma, head attorney at Liborous Oshoma Chambers. He's also a lawyer, advocate for good governance, justice and equity, human rights crusader, and public policy and social affairs analyst. Liborous, it's great to speak to you again. I've been following your critical commentary on the many public discourses in Nigeria and across the globe. Thank you for sharing your recent clip yesterday on what good governance is in Nigeria. I look forward to a very fruitful conversation with you today.
My pleasure. Thank you. And many things that would deepen the conversation and, take Africa and Nigeria to the next level. I'm in for it.
Brilliant. So Nigeria is currently embroiled in an anti-government protest, protesting bad governance, a situation that's turned violent in some places and led to loss of lives. Can you provide a bit more context to this protest and the dynamics that it has presented?
Yeah, before now, they've always been protests in Nigeria, but we've never really had, this type where, protesters will give warnings and then set a day or days or weeks out for protest. And I think this is also encouraged by what, started in Kenya and then also what is going on in Bangladesh. So there's been this belief that Nigerians are docile, Nigerian youth are laid back, Nigerians, if you like, push them to the wall, they'll break the wall. And so consistently, government in, government out, would take advantage, live a ostentatious lifestyle, steal what they want and what they don't even need. And in most cases also, recruit a few, of followers here and there. And then ride roughshod on Nigerians, and then election comes, there's this frenzy. So this administration came, there were questions as to the legitimacy of the election and who won. The court, eventually the Supreme Court of the land, decided one way that, look, the current president actually won that election and that the petitioners and those that are opposed to or those that are questioning the validity of the election, have not been able to substantiate their claim. And so that has been back and forth. And then the removal of subsidy that Nigerians feel was a common denominator, that everybody was benefiting. And then that why their leaders are asking Nigerians to subsidize, the leaders, are currently not subsidizing lifestyle. They travel abroad, they go for medicals, their children are schooling abroad, they drive expensive cars that are not produced in Nigeria. They earn humongous salaries and allowances and tell Nigerians to, make sacrifices. So it's against that backdrop that people felt, look, you know what? It is bad governance that is actually causing all of this. If there were no bad governance, we won't be discussing subsidy. If there was no bad governance, our politicians will not be earning so much. If there were no bad governance, we will have infrastructures. And so people, decided to say, you know what? Let's end bad governance and probably maybe we'll have a Nigeria of our dream. So, but government had, rather than embrace that reality, but even though, stylishly, you still hear from their voice that, they are aware that Nigerians can no longer be pushed the way they are used to before, but they're still looking for who to blame. Even if there are people to blame, even if our opposition will latch in on this, because opposition's responsibility is to highlight your faults, your fault lines, before the people. So at least when the election comes, people can give them opportunity. So they are consistently looking at the direction of the opposition, and why not taking responsibility for the failure and collapse of governance? Because the opposition will always do their thing. Even if they are all responsible, the first thing should be government should identify and appreciate the fact that, yes, it is our insensitivity. It is government insensitivity, to the welfare and well-being of the people, to the security, to the essence of government that is actually making people revolt. And that if government correct these things, nobody will be able to take advantage of the situation, So rather than look at the protests from there, they are looking at the imaginary enemies. So for me, I think that's also a misnomer. But one thing that the protest also has shown, apart from the massive illiteracy that it has shown across board, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, it has also revealed the need for us to actually know the numbers that we are as a people, and then also showed government that Nigerians can no longer be pushed to the wall the way they were used to. So those are the three, takeaway that I think that the protests really had, thrown up. And these conversations have been, they're ongoing. And especially if you just look at those from the north where the protests have become violent, if you look at the age bracket of, the people that are protesting, you really know that these are the same people that they used to rig election. During election, they will say they are underage. We all know they are underage. But during protests, they all push them to the street. They are already on the street. These kids are already on the street. Young boys who are known as almajiris, who are sent to Quranic schools and without sellable skills, without Western education. I had cause to visit the palace of the Emir of Daura when Buhari was the president. If you see the number of almajiris hovering around, that city. From there, I went to Katsina. That night, when I left the Emir of Katsina's palace, we were almost, trying to give money to some of those palace guards. We were almost mobbed by the number of these, young boys. So they're always on the street. So it was also an opportunity for them, for the camera to show their numbers. And so that brings us to, government really needs to find out the numbers that we are. Yeah, government is also trying to push back the responsibility of the state and the local government. And so recently you see people talk about the amount that government has shared to the state governors, billions that have gone to the hands of the state governors, billions as allocation that had gone into the hands of the local government chairman. But that's still not enough. We will not be talking about all of this sharing formula if we actually have a system of government where the revenue is generated from the bottom and then, percentages are paid to the top, rather than all the revenues are collected at the top and then you begin to share to the bottom. We won't be discussing all of this if the revenue structure was not skewed against the ordinary people.
Very brilliant. You've mentioned so many things. Matter of fact, this is a very comprehensive summary of the issues, but I'll pick them one after the other. So I think it's the famous Fela, the great Afrobeat, that said Nigerians are suffering and smiling. But like you rightly pointed out, we've seen with this protest, but then again, we've seen several protests in the Fourth Republic, which is since Nigeria returned to democracy after long years of military rule from 1999. We've seen several protests. We've seen during Obasanjo, we've seen with Oshoma as the head of the NLC. We saw during Goodluck Jonathan, the 2012, the Occupy Nigeria protest. So we saw the NSAS protest in 2020, and we're seeing this. So we'll see a gradual, shift in this. But there are two things I want to bring up from this protest. So one, fuel subsidy. Obasanjo's government, Obasanjo, who was a former military ruler, Buhari was a former military ruler, and then Jonathan, they were not able to remove this fuel subsidy despite those protests. How was this? How was Buhari and Tinubu's government able to do it? That's number one question. Then the two is, what changed with the Nigerian population? Why are they no longer suffering and smiling?
You know, they're like they say, there's a limit to how much a man can bear. Nigerians have never really been the type to suffer and smile. Just that, you know, people think that at every turn, rather than negotiate, we should take to the street. The Oshomole-led protests, if you remember, then, as at that time, this awareness was not as massive as it is today. The social media was not the kind of super information highway that we have it today. Thirdly, if you remember then, if in the 90s, protests were led by student union activists. Then came democracy. Yes, Ogaga Ifowodo and co, anti-SAP riot. Then came democracy. We now had protests led by labor. And over time, consistently, there's this belief that labor had been compromised. They will call for protest, they call for strike, and midnight, you know, they'll say the strike or the protests have been called off. And so people felt disappointed. And some of these leaders also went into government and became part of those that should be protested against. So with the advent of the information superhighway, you know, people that didn't even have television before now have television via their telephones. And so whether information, half-truths, lies, or innuendos are shared via social media now. So depend on the one you can trap. So that also creates massive awareness for people. And in 2012, this same subsidy, right from even the Obasanjo's tenure, the subsidy had been a recurring decimal. The fuel price, appropriate pricing for petroleum products was what led to those protests. 2012, the unfortunate part was that the government said they can no longer pay subsidy. People who are in government today were in opposition, and they protested the removal of fuel subsidy. And they said, look, you can't do that. Let the poor breathe. That the only people who are benefiting from this subsidy are the poor. You can't say because you cannot, take care of your responsibility as government to clean up the urgent table, and so you want to suffer people, you want to punish them by asking them to pay more. And some even said there was no subsidy, that while the refinery is not working, and that if the refineries are working, that the 445,000 barrel per day crude meant for local consumption would, which is what NNPC actually refines and sell back to Nigeria, that the cost of refining will be domesticated in Naira. So there won't be any need for you to talk about subsidy. So all of these arguments were back and forth, and the fuel price was reduced. So unfortunately, the NSAS is all saying bad governance, police brutality, hunger. If you remember, the demands, 5 for 5 demands was about police, but when he extended to 10 for 10, it also included bad governance. It excluded ostentatious lifestyle of the leaders. It also included, fuel availability, subsidy, and all of that. So now came those people who were in opposition in 2012 who condemned subsidy removal. Now they're telling you that it is inevitable that we cannot sustain consistently paying subsidy. I agree with them, but the problem is, the question that the people are asking is, which has been a consistent question. If you remember in 2019, when the current GMD of NNPC Limited was appointed, and he did promise that before 2023, all the 4 refineries in Nigeria will be up and running, that will be working. In 2023, they spent about $1.5 billion to revive the Port Harcourt and the Kaduna refinery. And then told us that that the refineries will work by December 2023. But before then, what they just did was to use ROPG, what they call ROPG, pie gas in the energy sector, to flare the refineries and then give the impression that they were going to work. And so the refinery consistently has been paying staffs and incurring finances and without refining a drop of crude. So all of that added to the cost. Even when the government now sat down and said, look, we have removed subsidy, that same day, the very minute it was announced, prices of PMS went up. And you know, for an economy that's a mono economy that runs on one product, it will affect every other sector. Considering the fact also that for the past 15 years, we have been battling with insecurity. And insecurity also, because of insecurity, a lot of farmers are not able to go to farm. And so, and you know, what do you call it, the loss of demand and supply, the economic loss of demand and supply. So once farmers are not able to go to farm, supply of foodstuffs will reduce. And once supply reduces and demand is high, prices will certainly go up. So that's what has been happening, coupled with the fact now that what government is subsidizing, instead of government subsidizing farming, now they decided, okay, look, well, let's just remove subsidy. And now they are also all of a sudden realizing that they need to subsidize farming now. They need to waive importation of rice. So all the gains that were made about local rice production will be lost by just that one singular decision that was not properly taught. So the hunger became biting, and you know that social security in Nigeria is your brother giving to you. The government does not give you social security. Please, I need urgent 2K. This is my account number. That is Nigerian social security. So when people who ordinarily would give you no longer have, if you go to the big hotels in Nigeria that used to be a beehive of activities, you know, the receptions are very, you know, few people and scanty. So all of these are pointers to the fact that really there's hunger in the land. So, and for some persons, people who are hungry, there's a limit to how much you can push them to the wall. And then now came the politics of all of it. You know, right from the First Republic, the 3 major ethnic tribes in Nigeria had been mutually suspicious of others. Anytime you have the Igbos and the Hausas in government, the Yorubas will cry foul. Anytime you have Niger Delta in government, the Hausas and the Yorubas will cry foul. Anytime you have the Yoruba or the Yoruba in government, the Hausas will say they are marginalized. So now you have Yorubas. The last time you had a Fulani in government, Goodluck Jonathan, when you had Goodluck Jonathan in government, who was from South, the Yorubas said they were marginalized, that if you look at the first 5 persons, there was no Yoruba there, even though they frustrated the emergence of a Yoruba as the Speaker of the State House of the Federal House of Representatives. They eventually, you had the Igbos, you had a lot of Igbos in that administration with Goodluck Jonathan. They even, you know, adopted him as one of their own. I remember that he was a Zikiwe. And after that government, Buhari came. Then came the, Buhari leaned favorably leaned in favor of his people, appointed a lot of Hausas and Fulanis into government. And then, you know, because there was a collaboration, a synergy between the Fulanis and the Yorubas, Igbos were completely excluded from the government. And then you had cries of, oh, Igbos are marginalized. And then came the election. It was a 3-horse race, majorly from the 3 major ethnic tribes. You had Atiku Fulani, you had Yoruba, Goodluck Tinubu. And then you had Peter Obi, who was from the east. A lot of people felt Peter Obi, being a younger candidate, you know, who was very eloquent and could, you know, tell the people what they want and how Nigeria can be rebuilt. A lot of people felt, look, this should be the man that would go. But at the end of the day, the elections didn't go that way. And some persons felt that the election was stolen. And that's another crisis. And then the appointment of Tinubu followed, if not worse, in the line of what do you call it, Buhari, nepotistic, Yorubas. You see 10 persons appointment. You will have maybe like, you have 4 Northerners, you have maybe 5 Yorubas, and then 1 Easterner. So that also created a lot of debate and talk. And, with the way the election went, anything that happens in Lagos, so there was this issue of, oh yes, the Igbos in Lagos, want to create mayhem, or it is the Igbos in Lagos that do not like Tinubu. But really, in a real sense, hunger does not know tribe, hunger does not know color, hunger does not know race. The way the man in Arugungu is hungry is the same way the man in Amuvi, in Arochukwu, is hungry. It's the same way the man in Udupani, in Cross River, is hungry. It's the same way the man in Erumukokwara in Delta State is hungry. These people do not know. So the conversation really that government should be having, or that we need to be having with ourselves, is a conversation of the rich and the poor. How do we bridge the gap? Because what you really have in Nigeria, it is the fact that the rich consistently marginalize the poor. Because if we talk about appointments and tribal appointments, Obasanjo's presidency did not tar the road to Ota in the Southwest. The same way Goodluck Jonathan's presidency did not turn Otuoke to heaven on earth. Also, Yar'Adua's presidency and Buhari's presidency did not remove the Almajiris from the streets in Katsina. And so the hunger is everywhere. All of the people that have been appointed from these areas, the benefit goes to them and their families, not to the common man. We have governors across board. And so the discussion, the conversation should be, leaders should not marginalize the Nigerians, the average Nigerians, the way they are consistently been marginalized, irrespective of where they are coming from. So these are the debate I think should be the fallout of the protest. But are we ready to have those conversations? The answer is no, because nobody is ready to have a genuine conversation around this thing. The government is in self-denial. The opposition also is living in denial. They are not even as potent as opposition should be. The people also feel they can take their destiny in their hands, but they need a leader to galvanize them. But in galvanizing them, we have been divided along tribal, religious, and fault lines that we no longer able hear each other speak. So that is the bane of the society we live in. And until we identify these problems and try to mend them, then they will continually, be problem. And then lastly, if you look at the protest, the the Minister for
Information and Strategy,
Minister for Works. No, Minister for Works. I don't want to go to.
Okay.
I don't want to to that the name you called now. I really don't want to dignify him. I don't want to dignify him by recognizing him, because he's one person. I don't want to dignify him by recognizing him again, because he's one person. I think he's the man, from what I have gathered, he's desperately looking for recognition. And the more we begin to discuss about what he says, the more we'll give him such recognition. What I'm saying is that, saying so quickly, the Minister for Works, Umahi, and Benjamin Kalu, the I think Deputy Speaker of the House of Rep, we're thanking the Easterners for not protesting, but they forget that not protesting is a protest in itself.
Yeah. As a statement,
rather than find out, try to understand the reason for not protesting, which is, look, we have no stake in this entity because of the way we are being treated. They just go, because you want to appreciate a government that you're serving in, So I think there's a need for a genuine conversation, not necessarily a national conversation. Let it be at the regional level. Let everybody, hold that conversation. And then those representations can now be made at the national level, so that, it's a conversation that should be ongoing. But otherwise, the protests that will come after this, someday Nigerians will be able to mend fences, The people who, the Pharaoh that do not know Joseph, will be able to mend fences and will not even listen. So that's my fear, really.
Yeah, you've mentioned. Let me start from. I don't know if you remember how you and I first started. It was for my book, and I think I should send you a link to a copy of the book. It's Nigeria's Fourth Republic, a militarized democracy, where we've chatted. But there's something you said, very very impressive, and it was during my research, and I spoke to Matthew Kuka, and he expressed similar sentiments when he said, what we're having today, whether you call it MEND from Niger Delta, whether you call it Boko Haram, is a crisis of legitimacy. And
Yes.
the state, there's no state, absence of the state. And the thing you've mentioned, you traced it back to the history of Nigeria, the political structure that we inherited from the colonial master. I know you and I had this conversation before, and you said, I will remind you what you said. You said, even if that's so, it's been 60 years, we should have, developed whatever. But it seems that politicization of ethnicity has always been like that. So you see, during the NSAS, the protest was kind of like restricted to the south. During this bad governance protest as well, is more in the north. And people say, oh, when Buhari was in power, the north didn't participate in the NSAS. So the elites have been able to manipulate this, politicize this ethnicity, and people have not been able to see that this is, like Riley said, the haves against the have-nots, the rich against the poor. Now, you've also mentioned fiscal policies, the structure of Nigeria, where they abnormally, where people have all this oil and then you're distributing money to the state, and the state or the local don't have the absorb of that responsibility. But I guess my question to you is this: if we move to, we understand this politicization of ethnicity, religion, but I think we're entering a dangerous trend. I don't know if you agree with this, where there is this anti-Igbo not only sentiment, but there's an open call for. We saw it during the election in Lagos and so forth, but now it seems it's getting to a stage where we might be having a new Rwanda. I don't know if this is just politics of ethnicity. It's not going to get to that place, or if this is a dangerous level that we're getting to. Do you think so?
Yeah, you see what's playing out here. It is not. We won't have a Rwanda. Let's get that off the way. We have seen this played out before, but it's just that because, like I said, because of the advent of social media, it is heightened. Let me take you also a little bit back. And I told you, anytime you have a Yoruba and a Hausa, before, okay, let's start from the First Republic. The First Republic, you had an alliance between the North and the East. You had Tafawa Balewa and Nnamdi Azikiwe.
NCNC.
Yes, NCNC and MPC. And then in the Second Republic, the same thing. You had Shagari and Azikiwe. In fact, MPP, Azikiwe's party, became the Speaker of the House of Representatives, even though you had a government of the MPN at the center. Awolowo consistently maintained, his domain, which is the Southwest, and then the Middle Belt, Old Bender State, Old Midwest. Midwestern state. This was, in 2015, was the first time that the Westerner, had an alliance with what you would call the not too called northern politicians, which is, Buhari, a fallout of the traditional politicians in the north. And if you look at that election, right from 1999, the Southeast had always voted for PDP. So even in the last election, if Peter Obi were not in the ballot, for example, if Peter Obi had flown the ticket of the PDP, Tinubu wouldn't have even smelt, 40% of the vote, because, the East, that is the traditional domain of the PDP. So in that election, what was the first time the Yorubas were creating, or the Southwest were aligning with the North to, form government? And then came Buhari his primordial tribal sentiment of appointments, nepotistic. And so all of his appointments, major of his appointments were just for his people, and then one or two from the Southwest. And election in Nigeria is seen like a war. Everybody will throw in what they have. Everybody, not just in the Southwest, in the North, in the East, in the West. This conversation, we are not ready to have it. Everybody will throw in what they have. That is why, let me start. I will take it state by state. That is why an Ebonyi man, for example, who was born and bred in Enugu, cannot contest for governorship in Enugu. That is why an Igbo man who in his life knew Kano as his only home. He was born in Kano, grew up in Kano. Even if he becomes a Muslim, he will never be able to aspire to be governor of Kano. They will always tell him where he's from. Till date, people still taunt Obasanjo, that Obasanjo is not a Yoruba man, and all of that. Coupled with the fallout of the war, the civil war, we have still not recovered from it. There's this mutual suspicion amongst ourselves. Even though we try to blur the line by creating unity schools, we created NYSC, those lines had never for one day be blurred. Anytime there's a riot or protest in the North, who are the targets? The foreigners, the Igbos, and some of the Yorubas, who they know this right from, not just today, right from time immemorial. Anytime there's a protest, even when we were students, anytime there was protest, they target foreigners. And that's why also, no matter how I have a friend who grew up in or is from Edo, grew up in Ogun State, worked all his life there. To become a director was like the camel passing through the eye of a needle. He had to resign. So that is how we play politics. What has played out now is the fact that you had a government back to back who felt, yes, my people, Buhari said it, just that people didn't understand. He said, look, these people didn't vote for me. You don't expect me to share appointments with them. Tinubu also came to this mindset. These people forget also that they are now president of Nigeria, not just the president of those that voted for them. And that if you now want vote from these people that didn't initially vote for you, you need to also give them a sense of belonging by carrying them along. So, but no, they would rather draw from, they just feel, look, no matter what I do, these people will never vote for me, they will never like me. So I would rather compensate my people, because we also see politics as compensation, not to work. We see it as opportunity to compensate. That is why when people pray for you, they say, I pray you get appointment. As if that's the only way you can make it in life. And so came Tinubu. Tinubu also felt these people did not vote for me. And then now came the election. The election was highly polarized. And certainly you won't blame an Igbo man for supporting his own, who he also feels is competent and credible. Also, I would also not blame the Yorubas who feels, oh, look, Tinubu is our own, whether he's competent or not, I will support him. Let me give you a practical example of the way government is run in Nigeria. A client of mine won a contract from NNPC, and at the end of the day, that contract was awarded to a Northerner, under Buhari, to a Northerner. We went to the National Assembly, we went to DSS. There was nowhere we did not go to. At the end of the day, anywhere you go, it is language here, language, despite the fact that this man grew up in Kaduna and speaks Hausa fluently. But they remember that he was a Yoruba man. So the contract went to somebody from the north. And during the election, this man told me, he said, look, I know Peter Obi is competent too, but I will support my brother, because if my brother wins, it will be food for me because of what had happened to him. So to him now is, I don't care about Nigeria. All I care is about myself. So we're all by pocket. So we are very self-centered. And so for the election, everybody, supported one of theirs. And after the election, and then now came the governorship election. People don't say this. I also want to blame candidates. Why will you all of a sudden, you now remember that your name is Chinedu? You now remember that your name is Chinedu and that your mother is Igbo because you want to appeal to the sentiment of a group of voters. No matter how brilliant you are, the moment you bring in tribe into politics in Nigeria, people are going to latch onto it. And so anybody, and mind you, look, give it to the Easterner, they are Republican in nature, they can live anywhere. They are the people that are uniting Nigeria. Because you have other tribes, they hardly travel. And that's why also, no matter how much the Hausa man lives in Onitsha, he still remains an Hausa man. No matter how much the Yoruba man lives in Enugu, he remains a Yoruba man. No matter how much the Igbo man, even if he speaks Yoruba, in Oshodi, and is one of the area boys, someday he's still going to be reminded of where he came from. He will go home. So that election, the moment you now say, oh, I am Chinedu, remember I'm one of you. What that means to the average voter who is from Yoruba, these people want to try to install king in our land. Because mind you, political office in Nigeria is a tenured monarch. So because you don't have, other tribes migrate the way the Igbos migrate in Nigeria. So it becomes very easy. They are forming a block. They want to determine. Mind you, it didn't just start with this last election. Yeah. Was it 2007? No, 2011. Jimmy Agbaje also appealed to those voters. They have block vote. You can't take it away from them. They have markets, they have union, and they are very, together because they attend village meetings. So the moment you appeal to them, the politicians feel threatened. Oh, these people now want to, swing because they have a block vote. If we do not disorganize them, if we don't threaten them, that means we want to, they will be able to determine, who governs us. And truly, the way things are going, if care is not taken, someday, people that migrate, look at, did we ever believe that an Indian, migrant would become a prime minister did you ever believe that, a black man whose father is from Kenya and mother and this thing will become a president of America? For me, as far as what that means, that's what it means. So, but here we don't see politics like that. We view politics from the prism of ethnicity. And that's why these lines were not there during the military. But the question is, these lines consistently, this narrative are thrown and highlighted by the politicians because they are the ones that will benefit. If you say, give Yorubas appointments, it is not you and I that will benefit. It is not my friend Oladipo or Olanikpoku or Sheung that will benefit. It is the politician whose son or whose brothers that they will send their names as appointees. It is the same thing with the East. It is the same thing with the North. But the problem, the challenge is, the people that will bear the brunt as the everyday person, they now say, oh, the market trader, oh, these are the people that want to, install a king here. And so you now have that consistent narrative. Oh, Igbos becoming endangered species. I can tell you, in the next election, if another candidate from another tribe wins the election, this narrative will change. The story will change. And then lastly, one other major challenge is this, we must talk about it, is this, unknown gunmen, declaration of Biafra, sit at home and, all of that. I used to go to Owerri a lot, at least once or twice a month. I like the town, the serene environment, quiet, but now I can no longer go. Also, the Southeastern leaders should be seen to talk about these things and find a way to ensure that, there's development in these areas. You don't allow some politicians to use ragtag boys to run riot around everybody and chase away development, create insecurity in that region. That will also now leave your land to be vulnerable. So wherever you are, remember, it was when under Buhari, it was the Northerners that said Igbos should leave the North. Today, it is the Yorubas that are saying Igbos should leave Yoruba land because now it is their brother that is president. But one thing the Yorubas don't know is that Tinubu is not going to be president forever. They also have their brothers in the North. They have Yorubas in the North. If tomorrow you have a Yoruba settings and then there is election and the Hausas and the Fulanis come and say, Yorubas leave us, they'll be in Lagos here shouting. We say, though tribe and tongue may differ in brotherhood we stand, but yet we keep highlighting the divide. I'm a minority inside minority, inside minority, inside minority. So you can imagine when some of us sit back and look at these three major ethnic tribes that should be uniting us, fighting over the spoil of war. When I say spoil of war, spoil of election. So these are the crises. And let me tell you, I rest it squarely at the doorstep of politicians. Politicians, use this opportunity. They say, oh, you want to interfere in who becomes governor here. You want to interfere in who becomes president. This is our domain. But mind you, these are the same people they buy lands from you. They invest in your environment. They build companies. They build industry here. At that point, you don't know that they are not from amongst you. It is when there is election. Look, let me tell you, Dangote has built a refinery in Lagos. The day Dangote decides to be governor of Lagos, that is the day you will know that Dangote is an enemy of the people that he has, been living with, that he has even invested in their land. That is what politics does to us in Nigeria.
I have two more questions before we end. But I don't know if I wanted to touch on the the flying of the Russian flag. But I don't know if I want to follow the natural progression of your conversation. You mentioned the Southeast governors, and I'm from the Southeast, but I grew up in Lagos. So I went there recently to bury my mom, and I'm telling you, I had opportunity coming back to travel, and I saw the level of underdevelopment in the Southeast, all through down the whole of the Southeast. So I agree with what you're saying in terms of that. But one of the things you've mentioned earlier on, you talked about the North and their margeries. I also served in Sokoto, and I tell you, sometimes you're eating, once you turn like this, there's a flock. There's a flock.
They're like flies.
Like that. So I've seen that level of, and also based on my own study and research in the North, I've seen all of that. But you mentioned something clearly before. You mentioned massive illiteracy.
Yeah.
And you mentioned education, and you mentioned the masses can be used, and I've always said this, can be used for force of good or bad for all these elites. So I think the question is, maybe you can answer this after you've answered the Russia. The question is, how do we deal with this level of how do we deal level of poor education or ignorance? Well, I think that's where the solution might lie. In terms of, like, if the masses, you said if somebody is educated, you can't manipulate them to do anything. Let me use your word. You said if they are well fed, they will do that. So how do we get them? What do we need to do?
You see, let me tell you, the elite know. That's why in the North, for example, you never hear of one elite or one politician who has an endowment fund for education, for sponsorship of scholarship for education. You can't find any. They know. And so they know that the moment you are educated, there will be no pawns to use for their consistent degradation of the environment. So they want to continually be the only head. But one thing they don't know, I want to ask you, where are the Almajiris, our age mates? that, didn't go to school in the 70s, in the 80s. Some of them are the bandits that you see today. I'm telling you categorically, because they have no sellable skills. They have no education. They were used. And if you remember, Toji, one of the militants and the bandits leader, said they were used by politicians and promised heaven on earth, but they were not given anything. And so you put arms in their hand and they see that, they say fear is the key that unlock the pockets of the rich. And that when they use those same arms, turn against you and threaten you, they get so much money. So they are using it now, and government is paying compensation, paying ransom, and now government is confused across board. It is the same thing with the South-South, it is the same thing with the Southeast, it is the same thing with the Southwest. So what we need to do, we cannot be deceiving ourselves. We are not one, and we can never be one. Our orientation, our mentality, our ideology differs. We don't reason alike. We also have our various system of government that we had pre-colonial era, which we should have, find a way to faction and remodernize our form of democracy. What kind of democracy have we given to the world? Nothing. We just copied hook, line, and sinker without even adapting it to our peculiarity and our environment. The Igbo man, for example, they say Igbo Enweze, but we agree they have kings, but that's why they have small communities. That's why you have autonomous community everywhere. But one man now wanted to be the leader of all of them. Nah, or is that possible now? So, but for the Hausa man, the Fulani man, one man can be the leader, and they all queue behind him and say, it is the will of Allah. For the Yorubas, they have respect for elders, but they have a way of checkmating the elders also. They have a system of government that is different. So why don't we go back to those regions, create government from those regions, create a weak center that we can contribute to. That weak center will be able to protect our territorial integrity and also protect the currency, the uniformity, those things that bind us together. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe once said, when two incompatible meet, they can coexist by agreeing to agree and agree to disagree. Let us agree to disagree. Let us agree that, yes, this man is distinct, is different, is in his own way. Let that be his strength and not a weakness. The man who can travel with cows from Kano to Calabar, let us empower him and keep him somewhere instead of, traveling around with cows. The man who can trade and can create billionaires out of a small shop, let us also empower him and allow him, invest and fester in that way. And that way, other regions might learn from him. That other man who can go abroad and come learn and bring back to replicate and domesticate, let us allow them. Like they say in Igbo land, let a cook or perch, let the fowl perch. At the end of the day, it will be better and development will grow from the bottom to the top. But this idea of you have 2,500 people in a party, and then you have 36 trays, and then all of them go to the service point. One service point, they're all waiting to collect on their service tray. They go to the seats of their people and then begin to share. Before you come back, the one that you have shared before will be finished, and everybody will clog that service point. That's what is happening in Nigeria. Everybody goes to Abuja with 36 trays, and then they collect small, and then come back. You say Federal Road that runs from Kotekpene through a movie to Arochukwu to Bende, Ututu, Ihechowa, and all of those places. The man who is supervising that road is in Abuja. How many times does he visit the place? Those days where it works, we had highway maintenance whose office were domiciled in these places. I do not see why revenue should not be generated from these places and used to service all of the infrastructure in that environment. And that is why today, anybody who is the king, his people will rally around him, and others will say, no, you have to leave that seat. We will be the one that should occupy the seat. When Goodluck Jonathan was there, you had agreement or no agreement. Power shift was Obasanjo's time. Power shift or no power shift. So all of these things will continually be there. That's why no matter how long the Hausa man or the Fulani man, the Northerners have remained in the saddle, his people are impoverished. because it is not about its people. You have more Almajiris in the north, more than the number of the times that they have ruled. And that is why these Almajiris don't know their right from their left. Maybe somebody just sat down and said, you know what, military, look at these countries, Niger and Co, that are close to you here. Russia helped them, and their military now are there, and they all have good governance. But they forget, like I said in my video, that the same military in Nigeria are burying money in septic tank. We've had the same military government, and it didn't bring any good. Rather, it brought poverty. So it is not about the military coming in or that Russia will help military to take over. And the fact that also that Niger and Burkina Faso are smaller countries, they're like states compared to Nigeria. And all those people also, you also have uniformity in languages in these places, unlike Nigeria, where Bia can be a curse in Plateau, and Zo can be a blessing in Yoruba land. Let me give you an instance. In Benin, for example, you say, a Benin man that tells a Yoruba man who is crossing the busy Ikorodu highway, Ele, in Benin is a greeting. In Yoruba land, Ele is don't run. And the man will feel angry. I'm crossing a busy highway with vehicles. You're telling me don't run? Do you understand? Sorry. Ele in Yoruba land is a greeting.
It's a greeting.
But in Benin, it means don't run. So you're telling a Benin man who is crossing a busy highway in Lagos, LA, to him, you're telling you want to kill him. So that uniformity is not there. And what we try to use English so that we can hear ourselves talk, it not work. So what we need to do is, you can't force somebody to speak your language. Let's create infrastructure in your place. Let the people go. Let them be attracted to you. And that's why people are saying in Lagos, when Lagos was federal capital territory, the funds, collective funds, was used to develop it. And so it became a land that welcomes everybody. Yeah, you can give it to the government. They consistently are trying to welcome everybody. But the politicians, the average Nigerian politician, Lagos State government now, for example, but the average Nigerian politician sees himself first like the Yoruba man before he sees himself as a Nigerian. And that's why when there is a common enemy, that's why we see ourselves as Nigerian. The moment that common enemy is gone, we see, oh, where are you from? You ask a man, what's your state of origin? He says, I'm from Anambra State. You now go for that, which local government in Anambra? He tells you, I'm from Udunokofia. You now say, okay, which village in Udunokofia? So we drive it down to that level. Unlike other places where you are in now, the man says, look, I'm from Scotland, I'm from Scotland. You don't begin to ask him which part of Scotland, is he Edinburgh or, because of the uniformity in development, and everybody is responsible from the grassroots. You cannot have a problem that is at the grassroots level and then you want to find a solution from the top. It is not possible. And that's why those people who do not know their right from their left can be distributed. Flags can be given to them and they point them to a direction and say, oh, look at those people. The grass is always greener on the other side. Go there. When we have it there, we will have, you will have a good life. That's not true. And then lastly, we need to know how many we are. You can't plan for a people. You want to cook food for your house. You don't even know the number of people that will eat that food. You either overcook or undercook. So you need to know the number of people. Over time, it is also very common for people to say, the military gave us this. Or the colonial masters didn't want us to develop. That's why they gave us this. The colonial master left us long ago. We have been governing ourselves for how many years now? Why can't we fashion out a government that will be befitting and that will suit us? And because we are all very selfish and self-centered, those that were in opposition yesteryears that are in government today, they are doing the same thing they once criticized because the food is in one spot. Ordinarily, I won't have any business going to Lagos if, we generate revenue from the bottom. I'll probably be a rice farmer by now because I have massive arable land to farm rice. But I'm farming rice. The man who is to take care of the security of my rice farm is in Abuja. What does he know about the local insecurity that I'm facing? I have off-takers, but I cannot go farm rice because of the challenges of insecurity. So now I have to be looking for a white-collar job. Ask people who are farming. The man who will provide electricity for me, for my farm, is far away from me. You know, so these are the everyday challenges that even the business people face in Nigeria. That's why everybody is going into politics. Why will a man who is doing well in business be given an appointment and is celebrating it? When you know ordinarily, if you go there, your business will suffer. But when you get there, it's to go and make more money. What does our governors done for us? Nothing. But these governors are from these same places that we talk about, and we rotate it around the zones. So the problem with us as a people is that we are very selfish. We are self-centered. We now see Nigeria as a territory that is ungoverned. There are so many ungoverned territories. So everybody will take their slice. You cut your slice, you hold on to it. You cut anybody that want to threaten that your space. You can do anything. You throw cautions to the wind, including resort to tribal sentiment, tribal slaw, and all of those things. For those people in Lagos, they feel we have cornered Lagos as our own. Let the Igbos not come and attempt to take it or share it with somebody, But they forget that what you should do is they all have a stake here. They pay taxes to you. They have development here. The time you should recognize their influence is also now. And you can recognize their influence through good governance. When they were demolishing houses in Lagos, some people also tried to throw ethnicity into it. That it's only the houses of the Igbos. And the government came out strongly to say, no, we are demolishing. We don't even find out. We don't know who owns the house. But once you are on waterways, we demolish. That argument died naturally because people wanted to use it. The same thing politicians are doing now. If they give appointment today, my brother, Doc, it is those people that will benefit, not the average man on the street. But the average man on the street is the one that will suffer the consequences of this ethnic, bigotry. And then the way we throw it, let me also tell you, because I was discussing with a friend of mine, and I said, look, the three major ethnic tribes, you people are the problem of this country. The moment you're outside government, ethnicity, I've been marginalized. You know what he called me? He said, I'm an Igbo hater. And I said, yes, that's you. That's at that level. Yoruba man will say, I'm a Yoruba hater. Hausa man will say, I'm a Hausa hater. It means unbalance. I do not see tribe. I see humans. I see nationalities. Let me give you, concluding this part. Ladipo, Aguiyi-Ironsi's section of the Ladipo market. Election is holding there in November. My brother, they are already fighting. These ones are not Yorubas or Igbos. They are already fighting. They are already using machetes in that market. Go to some market where you have the Yorubas as dominating. Election in that market, the Yorubas will fight and almost kill themselves. The same thing with the Hausas. That's why anywhere you have, a group of, people who are from the same ethnic stock. Okay, let me use my village community, my village meeting. Election of president, chairman, it was a problem. My community in Lagos, my village community in Lagos, it was a problem because they say, the former chairman embezzled, mismanaged. The person that wants to enter now, no, we don't want him. He's a friend of the former chairman. The house was divided. Just election and not be say chief for village, local Lagos Union. That is how much we see election in Nigeria. That's what is causing all of these things. So we need to manage it level where the people, where it is small to manage. Because if you consistently leave it at this same center, where one person will decide the yam, the knife, and decide who gets what, when, and how, there's going to be crisis.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with 100%. The law, this is very enriching. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I know our conversation is always very but we can spend the whole day talking about this issue. I know how passionate you are about this issue. This is very rich, and I share your optimism. And I've known you, I follow your work, and I do share most, partially everything. I don't have anything I disagree with you on. Thank you very, very much for your time and for your insight.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. Have a
My
very
pleasure.
good day.
And you too.
Good day. Bye. Thank you for tuning in once again to another episode of the Conflict and Development in Africa podcast. As usual, join me to thank our guest, Barrister Liborous Oshoma, for his very rich, exciting insight into the End Bad Governance protest in Nigeria and all its dynamics. I'll implore you to join me again next week for another exciting episode. For now, stay blessed, and I'll see you.